right, everybody, welcome to Season 2 of Pittman and Friends podcast. And this one's a little bit different. First of all, you might notice that my voice is deeper. I'm in Ocean City, and it's the Maryland Association of Counties. It happens every summer. Local government people come from all over. So, you go out late at night and you get in these places where it's really noisy and you end up shouting a lot. But I took this opportunity to sit down with my really good friend from just north of the border, Baltimore City Mayor Brandon Scott. Welcome.
Thank you, my brother, for having me. Thank you. Mako is always a very interesting place, but as someone who doesn't drink, I spent my night yelling and screaming for a different reason. I was playing basketball in the late night hours.
You were playing basketball while everybody else was out at going from reception to reception. Okay, good for you. You always do things differently.
I tried to give I started doing this in, I guess, 21 or 22 to give folks a reprieve from just having to go to receptions to drink. So every year, Mayor Scott's Mako reception is basketball. So last night we had about close to 20 people playing basketball, another 25 to 30 watching, myself, some delegates, some of the lobbyists, people that work staff, come and just have a good time.
And I didn't get invited because I suck at basketball.
It went out to everybody. The whole Mako knows. And people want to come see the mayor shoot a three-pointer in their face, so that's what happens.
Yeah. You got to play to your strengths, and that's definitely one of yours.
Exactly. Drinking is definitely not one of my strengths.
No, me either. I didn't drink much, but I did have to shout to be heard.
Yeah,
so, with the music
it's
and
hard
everything.
in the bars.
Yeah. All right. So I've been looking forward to this because you and I have been through a lot of things together.
We have.
Yeah. And I think we've gotten a lot of things done together. I mean, I actually wrote about you in my weekly letter. I wrote about mayors a few weeks back, and you're one of the mayors, I think, all-time greats.
Thank you, sir.
But I remember when you came in, some people said, "Oh, he's not ready." And he's in over his head. That was the people who were who've been running the city from the smoke-filled rooms for a lot of years. And I think it was more your manner but it was also you basically said no. I work in the public interest. I'm not going to make a deal that isn't in the public interest. Do you feel like you're different than previous mayors?
Yes, in many, many different ways. I think the funny thing about that, Steuart, is, I first ran for office when I was 27, but this is my 18th year in City Hall. I came to City Hall when I was 23. I'm 40.
You have a lot of experience.
A lot of 41. I had 13 years of experience in City Hall when I ran for mayor. And when I ran for mayor, it was the first time I ever heard someone say that I was too young or I needed more experience, which is always funny to me because there's a lot of things there. Like, yes, what you said is absolutely true. They knew that I was coming in this mindset that the way that we had been operating was broken. That just because a group of people got in a room and said this is what the mayor should do doesn't mean that was right for the city. It doesn't always mean it's going to be wrong. When they were right, I was going to say they were right. When they were wrong, I was going to say they were wrong. There's obviously racial undertones there, right? Because I was 36. Our good friend, Johnny Olszewski Jr. was 36 when he became the county executive. I don't remember a lot of stories about Johnny's age when he became, right? Our good friend, Senate President, was the same age roughly when he became the Senate President. I don't remember that. And I think you just have to unpack that. But it is very different for me. And I didn't think about it this way myself until recently. Someone who works for me, Andre Bunley, who runs my African American male engagement agency, I've known since I was in daycare because he was the principal at a school in my neighborhood. And so he's literally seen me grow up. He's known me since then. And recently, I was frustrated about
You grew up in Park Heights,
I grew up in Park Heights,
the best where Pimlico is and all that.
Pimlico, with the best neighborhood in Baltimore. And he said, Brandon, you got to understand, it's different for you. And I'm like, what do you mean, Doc? And he says, you're the only one that's ever had to live through all the bull. And then I thought about it. Even the mayors that look like me, right? They were either older, they didn't grow up in a neighborhood like Park Heights. They were secluded from some of the things that I had to experience. And it's different when you're born in 1984 in Baltimore, and you lived through the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. You lived through the height of drugs, the height of violence, the height of zero tolerance policing. It's different when the gun's been pointed in your face. It's different when you've been at your friend's funeral. So it is very different for me, and I take all of that experience and all those years of experience working as a staffer, right? Then I just was talking with Ebony Magazine last week, and it's like, well, who let you in the door? I said, look, I wouldn't be here.
Being a staffer is big.
Mayor Rollins
I wish more people
only let me in the door, but as a 23-year-old, she let me in every single room as her personal mentee. So I knew what was going to happen because I was sitting there. But many of the folks who wanted me to be different ignored the fact that I was there because I was just this young kid. They never thought in their wildest dreams that I would be the person sitting at that head-seated table, not that far away from there. And I think those years of experience, and it's no different. We don't just let somebody walk in and be like, oh, I'm going to be the CEO of a company. We don't do that, right?
Yeah.
Why is it the CEO of a government entity? For in my case, it's a $4 billion one. Shouldn't they have experience actually working there and knowing what it's like?
So being south of the border in Anne Arundel County, I don't know how many county executives in Anne Arundel have actually looked to Baltimore City for good ideas and how to do things. But I found myself doing that. When I was running for office, there were people in the northern part of the county that said they wanted to shut down the light rail from the city.
I remember this.
Going down to Cromwell Station. And no, I said, no, actually, we need more ridership. We need more people living by the stations. We need to do transit-oriented development. We just passed a bill for the Cromwell Station that allows housing to go there. It was
right.
It was zoned industrial. Yeah, and we got that done. And you and I worked together to try to get more state investment into transit. But one of the things that I wanted to do in the county was to make sure that we had good reentry programs. I wanted to make sure that when we were trying to reduce crime, that we were doing it with people in the community engaged. And so for those things, I looked at Baltimore City because you had years of experience. And so I remember I went up to Turnaround Tuesday, which is a sort of community embrace of folks as they're coming back from being incarcerated. And I spent my day up there participating in it and learning about it. And so we started Turnaround Thursday, and that's grown into a great program. And then on gun violence, you have shootings almost every day, but we had the shootings at the Capitol Gazette, and that really woke people up. But we have other shootings as well. And so we went to the health department, and we started the gun violence intervention team. And now we've got violence interrupters just like you do.
That's right.
So tell us about, I want to hear about the violence interruption program and some of the data that's gone along with the reductions in crime in those communities.
Yeah, and I think Steuart, this is an issue for me that literally is the reason why I'm in public service, right? The first time I saw someone get shot, I wasn't even 8 years old, and no one really cared, right? And as you said, I grew up in the shadows of Pimlico, so imagine living in a neighborhood that's the center of the sports world every third Saturday in May, and then having someone get shot in your neighborhood, and people don't care. They don't treat you like human, right? Yeah. And I think when you think about gun violence and having that lived experience and that government experience, for me, one, we have to recognize that gun violence is a public health issue. And the only way to solve a public health issue is through a public health approach. So we actually, when I was a council person, passed a bill that says Baltimore has to have, no matter who the mayor is, a comprehensive violence prevention plan that is led not by the police commissioner, but the health commissioner of Baltimore City, right?
Amen.
Fate would just have it that I'm the mayor that had to introduce into the first one. And throughout CVIP, we have so many different tenets of what we're doing. We have, and we were blessed to get $641 million of ARPA funding from our congressional delegation and President Biden and Vice President Harris. We used $50 million of that to grow our already existing community violence intervention ecosystem.
Wow.
We've had Safe Streets, a city program since 2008. I had 4 sites. We're now at 10, where we pay people, including those, and mainly those who used to be involved in that life, to be out and intervening in that violence first. And I always use the Park Heights Safe Streets for examples, because reporters and folks are always amazed that, like, when I'm there, the guys and I are just talking, and they was like, "What? Do you guys know each other?" And we just look and be like, we all went to school together growing up. And I use that as a point to tell them, like, look, yes, I can have conversations on this corner that no other elected official can have, but I still can't have the same one that they can. Because even though I grew up with some of those folks that are out there too, I was never out there on that corner involved in the things that they were involved in. It's different when my friends that were involved in that life, that changed their life, have that conversation. And that's what we're saying to folks, that it has to be a both and. No one is saying like, oh, just eliminate all policing. No, people never said that they didn't want policing in their neighborhood. They said they wanted constitutional policing and they want community-based involvement in solving problems in their own community, right? Which is something that we hear all the time. The community has to do it. But when the community steps up to do it in a different way, some folks push back. But then we expanded beyond that. We're funding organizations like We Are Us, that I used to be a member of. They don't let me walk around anymore. But they do the same work. They're out focusing on where violence is, focusing in on folks that they know, trying to get these people off the street, hospital-based violence response. And then when you look into the partnerships that we have, even in law enforcement, our flag
when you say hospital-based, I know you're talking about, what's the organization called? They're coming into Arundel.
So for us, it's based on it's hospitals. So LifeBridge has them at hospitals. St. Agnes has them. Hopkins has them. So everyone that gets shot.
So they go to victims of shootings.
Maryland has them.
Yeah, because they're most likely to be either a victim again or a perpetrator.
Yep. Who better? Everyone that gets shot goes to the hospital, right?
Yep.
When they go there, these hospital-based responders go to them, try to calm the situation down, see what we can do to mediate those issues so that folks don't have to go back and forth. And I think that's important work.
Yeah.
And then we do it in another way.
Incredibly effective work, too. The data on it shows that
data does not lie. And then we have our group violence reduction strategy. You lived in Maryland. You know about our consent decree in Baltimore for policing because our police department was operating unconstitutionally, literally, for most of my life, from 1984 until 2015, when we had this start. But now what we're doing, instead of going into a neighborhood like mine where I grew up and saying that everybody that's there, that's black or brown or poor, is most likely to be a victim or perpetrator of gun violence, what we did is, working with our partners at UPenn, the police department, we identified the small group of people, right, starting in the Western District in Baltimore, that were the most likely. And what we do is we go a focused deterrence model, group violence reduction strategy. So we go to them first. They actually get a letter from me that says, I know who you are. I know what you do. We want you to stay alive. You can't do that continuing to operate the way that you operate. We will help you with housing, education, mental health, substance abuse, whatever, relocation. This is your last chance. If you don't, the partnership is that we will then remove you through the police department, the attorney general,
so
the
a lot of
state's
that $50
attorney.
million you're talking about is actually going into services for people.
It's lifting services into lifting these people up. We have community moral voice partners. They go out and give those notifications to folks, the custom notifications for folks. Just a room of folks that sit there to talk about who's going to go talk to this person. Is it going to be the police? Is it going to be Safe Streets? Is it going to be a Roca? Is it going to be Is it going to be a pastor? Is it? Sometimes it actually ends up being me. Right? The mayor knows this person's family. The mayor has to do it. And I think that, like, what we've been able to accomplish, though, is that through all of that, through the police department, removing 2,500 illegal guns, turning those people over to our state's attorney and attorney general to prosecute, through the investments that we made into youth programming. When you and I are sitting here talking right now, Baltimore has the lowest homicides that we've had through this date on record, right? They've been keeping records of that for 50 years on record. We've never seen it this low, and we're not celebrating, but we're.
And it was only like 3 years ago.
3 years ago,
it was over 300.
Over 300, and you're talking about we've had 2 in the month of July.
How much of did having a different governor help? I mean, we remember what the former governor used to say about the city, and it was all about just getting people locked up and keeping them in longer. And this governor, as we know, is
different.
Very much believes leave no one behind and create opportunity for people. Is that had an impact for you as mayor?
And I think that for your listeners, the best way for people to see that, there's actually a documentary called The Body Politic. We were nominated for an Emmy this year that documents my first 2.5 years in office. and building up the very programs that we're talking about. It took me 8 months from me winning the election, which in Baltimore, was the primary, until I think January or February of the next year to even get a meeting with the former governor. Consistently, them not scheduling it, et cetera, not want to talk about it, and him just dogging the
Don't worry,
city.
it wouldn't meet with me either.
I know that.
Okay.
But I think it's important for people to know. But now I can call Governor Moore, and he can call me back within an hour or two, right? And having, we did get the former governor finally come to the table, but they were never fully at the table. Now we're having conversations and partnerships. For example, at Mako last year, I met with the team at DJS because they wanted to figure out how they could mirror some of the stuff that we're doing with GVRS with young people. And we connected them with some of our partners, Baltimore Brothers, We Are Us, and they're working with the higher risk young people that are DJS involved. That's what true leadership does. And I thank the governor for being a real partner in that. But if folks want to see it, check out the body politic.
While we're at Mako, and I don't want to make this all about how great our governor is, although you and I both think he's pretty great. But Mako is about local governments in every county. In fact, there are more red ones than blue ones, and it really matters when the governor's staff as well is working with the county staff. And that's been happening all over the state. And we hear it from our Republican friends that, wow, this governor shows up. This team is always there. And so that's been good to see. But there's a huge difference in the way those two governors handled gun violence. Just a very, very different way approach.
Well, one actually handled it. The other one just talked about it. That's the difference.
That's true. Politicize it and all that. And we won't even get into what this president is doing, claiming crime is up when it's down and then sending troops in and all that. So, and I hope law enforcement all across this state stands up in their uniforms, our chiefs of police, and says, we know what we are doing and we got this. We don't need help from troops.
I got a unsurprising, because I know this person, but to most people it would be surprising. To me, it's an unsurprising tweet from the former president of Baltimore FOP this morning, Bob Cherry, who I've known for a long time. Him and I disagreed a lot, we agreed a lot. But for him, someone who voted for the president to tweet openly and at me and say, leave the policing to the police, Mr. President.
Amen.
It shows what kind of time we're in.
Yeah. So you're doing a lot on youth engagement and employment and stuff. You got a program that's going on this summer, right?
Yes, we have a lot of programs that are going on this summer. And I think this is also a part of reducing violence. I think that we, for a long time, looked at our children, Steuart, as, and even when I was one of them, as a issue to solve, not a resource to invest in, right? When you think about my childhood where I lived when they were closing recreation centers in Baltimore and pools left and right. Every time the budget got tough, they were closing rec centers. Kind of like at the state level, every time the budget gets tough, they cut HUR funding, right? It was like clockwork. It happened every time. And we flipped that on its head. In my time in office, Rec and Parks operating budget has seen a 40% increase, right? And you think about now we have $200 million of capital projects going on. I opened 3 brand new pools this summer, including one at Tawanda Rec Center, which is my childhood rec center that I renovated. When I came into office in 2020, it was the exact same as it was when I walked in the door in 1989. The pool, I never swam in it.
And you and I should both acknowledge that part of the reason we've both been able to do infrastructure, things like that, is wisely investing federal money when it was available. It's not available anymore.
It's not.
But
spend it.
Creating things that'll last forever and improve communities forever with that money was the wise thing to do.
And we both of us got a lot of criticism for that. They're like, you should put it into programs, not in the capital. We're like, nope, because we have to spend it before they try to take it back. And my Lord, am I so glad that both of us and many of our colleagues did the same thing. But when you think about that, right, that opening, the fact that I never swam in that pool, Steuart, we had pools in Baltimore City that they had metal fences in to divide the deep and the shallow end, right? Now we have aquatic centers, but we go beyond that. We had 12,000 seats in city schools over the summer with young people there learning and earning. 8,500 young people had summer jobs in Baltimore through Youth Works. And it's not like our old time Youth Works program where they're just making sandwiches and cutting grass. People are working at Hopkins for me directly in the mayor's office. They're working at the Orioles, all of these things, creating BG, all of these companies hire folks, these young people to give them opportunity. I met a young lady 2 summers ago when I went to visit all the Orioles youth workers who now works for the Orioles full time. That's what we're talking about, and being able to do that. Midnight basketball leagues that we have, teen pool parties that we have, block parties, 42 summer camp through recreation parks, and all of our pools, our public pools, you can swim in for the price of free $99, which is the best price in the planet.
So you think that might have something to do with the reduction in
absolutely
bad stuff going on, right?
when you keep people engaged, right? We have 9 rec centers across the city that we extended the hours to 11 p.m. on the weekends, and we got to keep the young folks engaged as much as possible, and then hold people, whether they're young, old, black, brown, purple, orange, who, for our part, responsible. Make the arrest when people commit crimes.
Exactly the same as in our county, everywhere. One of the things that's not the same as in our 2 jurisdictions, though, is the tax base. So, and what I'm talking about, I say this sometimes, and people in my county might not like to hear this, but I sometimes say the suburban counties stole the city's tax base. What we did was we said, come on out to the land of pleasant living. We got this, that, and the other, and lower taxes. And so people move out of the city and they move into the suburbs and they build the dream home and all of that. And then they say, well, we don't want any more people here. We got too much traffic, overcrowded schools and all that, which is understandable because that's how human beings are. But then it left the city with not enough property of high value, and things start to crumble. The city's a lot older too than the buildings in the county, and so you've got that to deal with. And so then your property tax rate ends up higher than everybody else's. You can't really cut it because then you got no ability to deliver services. And so tell us about how you handle the need for redevelopment, the need to, both vacant homes, but also commercial stuff in downtown, and then how you work with the private sector that builds that stuff, whether the developers and all of them. How do you make sure the right stuff's getting built?
Yeah, I think it's a very different time, right? And we have to, when you talk about especially downtowns and economic development right now, you also have to think about the impacts that we're now seeing, the full impacts of COVID, right? Because every mayor and I talk to, everyone's talking about their downtown and how people work differently now. So office space and all of those things are just, that, right? It's never going to be what it was before February of 2020, right? We just have to come to that realization. And what we try to do is have a balanced approach, right? You can see things that are being built in the city, whether it's Baltimore Peninsula, whether we're talking about Harbor Point, right? The expansion there. And then now that we can see, we have $7 billion being invested in downtown Baltimore over the next few years, whether Harbor Place that we finally got in good hands, right? And I think that's the power of executive leadership, right? Harbor Place had been sitting there deteriorating on itself since I was in college, right? Every mayor that had this job before me could have done what I did, but they didn't. I pushed it through my law department into receivership. Only one person raised his hand and went in and said, in the receiver's court, I want to get it. Dave Bramble just happens to be a guy from West Baltimore, right?
A local developer,
guy, right? And bought it for $3 million. Only to then have the folks you were talking about earlier say that I gave it to him in a backroom deal. But we now have that is actually going to happen. And what we have to do...
And we should note that it's going to happen, but there was enough opposition that it actually, and you had to do a referendum.
It had to be on the ballot.
The voters chose to make it happen.
The voters saw through all the racism, all the NIMBY, all of those things. They saw through it, thankfully, and we can move forward. And it's
how dare you have a local guy designing this thing in Baltimore? There's these wonderful developers from Europe and designers that will come in and make it like
The irony of that is that the folks that owned it previously were external to the country. And we're like, well, why would we make that mistake again? It's just about having balance. We obviously have tax breaks and things like that, but we are in a very different position, Steuart. We have a quarter of my property tax base I can't tax. We have 11 hospitals. We have basically, if you get really
It's a
sick in the state of
nonprofit,
Maryland, you come to Baltimore to get service, right? We have the universities. A lot of state and federal buildings are in the city, and the federal ones. So that's an even different conversation right now.
Yep.
So we have that, and we have the impacts that you were talking about from the vacancy, and that's why we had to come up with a program that we've in partnership with myself, Build, GBC, the governor, once he got into office, a $3 billion 15-year plan to end vacant homes in Baltimore. But we're using some of the things that we would typically only see in the wealthy areas. So we're going to do a TIF for vacant homes in a few months so that we can see that. Because the
tax increment financing, where the new tax revenues go back into that community.
Yeah. So what we're now, when I came into office, we had 16,000 vacant properties, right? In 2020, December 8th of 2020. December 8th of 2000, there were 16,000, right? The number had not moved. We're now at 12,000 and something. The number is going down consistently, but we needed the capital to take that to scale, and that's how we're going to do it, while we continue to fight for things that we think are our fair share. You know, this is a big issue for me. When the suburbs were being built around the country, every state basically but the state of Maryland said that we had to backfill the city's tax base, and they did that through sales tax. They allowed the city. So if you're my sister city in St. Louis or Philadelphia or Columbus or Cleveland, Ohio, 80-something% of big cities keep some of the local sales tax, right, to offset. And if I had 1%, literally 1% of the local sales tax that's spent in Baltimore, which is roughly like $71 million, right, would allow me to put me at the level basically that everyone else is when it comes to property taxes.
But we haven't been able to pass state legislation to do that.
We haven't, not yet. We're going to keep fighting for it because it's the right thing to do, and it will level the playing field and ultimately alleviate some of the stresses that the city puts on the state and everyone else. Because we're now operating at that level playing field.
And even though you are doing things to encourage development, incentivize development, the right kind of development, you were never the choice of the kind of old school local developers as mayor, right? They tried to get you booted out after your first term, no?
They did, unsuccessfully. I won the second time in a larger fashion than I won the first time. And I think that it's unfortunate.
Some major financial resources.
Big money. You're fighting folks that own TV stations and the newspaper, right? So
control the media. They went after the Baltimore Sun,
they made me, I am the boogeyman, as I always say to folks. Like perfect example is violence. They asked me I set a goal that we were going to reduce homicides by 15%. When we didn't hit it that first year, we actually had a decrease. It was a small decrease. We had a decrease. It wasn't that we had a decrease. It's like, you didn't reach your 15% goal. Now that we're reaching and exceeding it's everybody. Well, it's not the mayor's fault. Like, it's because people are being prosecuted, which I love that we're prosecuting people for gun crimes. The state attorney's team, they do an excellent job. But
those numbers don't explain.
Well, it's not just that.
The huge reduction.
Well, no, it's part of it. Absolutely, it's part of it. I'm not saying that, but they prosecute cases based on the work of the police department that work under my command, and I think that that's the part that folks are leaving out. That if I am not directing the police to focus on guns and violent offenders and directing them to focus there instead of being focused on all these other ancillary things that they have been focused on for all those years, it doesn't happen. And I think that they're going to move the football, but for us, it's about doing what's right for the citizens of Baltimore. Those folks are thinking about the people that you're talking about, what's right for their pocket, and we don't care about that.
Well, I want to congratulate you for the work that you've done, congratulate you for getting the voters to the voters for stepping up, the voters of Baltimore, to continue the work that's actually, what is actually working. And then I also just want to note that as a county in the Baltimore region, we're part of the Baltimore Metropolitan Council. We all get together, we work together, and we learn from each other. And there's no question in my mind, I think most people understand this when they think about it, that when the core city is strong, then the whole region is strong. And I look forward to meeting you out on the water in the Patapsco with you on the kayak. Right?
I'll be on the kayak.
Me on the pontoon boat, and we'll have a good time together. But thank you for joining us for this. It's
anytime, my friend.
Yeah.
You're listening to the Pittman and Friends podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button, share with a friend, and join us for the next episode.